Well, Jackie, I think we'll see, but I'll say this. What makes it different each time is the fact that we continue to maintain the strategic advantage, and Iran's strategic capabilities continue to degrade. If you think about it from a military standpoint, now we have other neighbors in the region joining us, dealing with Iran. That is, I think, quite concerning. It should be to the Iranian regime. The other aspect of this, Jackie, and we talked about this briefly before, is the fact that the economic sanctions that Secretary Besson and his team at Treasury have been imposing are having a dramatic effect on the Iranian economy. The question is, how much more can they take? Their economy is shut off. Their economy is shut down. The military componentry is being devastated. It has been. And now we have other players in the region joining the United States to deal with Iran in a way that they've never seen before. So I'm certainly optimistic that President Trump is going to make certain that at the end, the goal is accomplished. That is, no nuclear capability for Iran. I'd like to see this done sooner than later. I think the rest of America would too, because I think everything turns around here in the polls, et cetera, once America, again, is on top and a winner.
You referenced allies in the region. We now know that the Saudis, the Crown Prince actually, called the president yesterday to discourage any escalation here. Last week, they had gathered 40-plus countries to try to put together a maritime defense coalition. They're very worried about a second front potentially opening in the Red Sea after the Houthis declared a naval blockade there. They want to make sure that this doesn't turn into a bigger situation. In your mind, why is that happening? You know, are the military stockpile concerns that we've heard about a factor at all in this?
Jackie, I think you raise an important point, and that is that Iran would like to destabilize the entire region because they'd like to control the entire region. And the fact is that neighbors are stepping up and realizing that they have a role to play here. They're going to be the most immediately impacted, and frankly, given Iran's military attacks on everybody in the neighborhood, that's become painfully clear. I welcome the fact that these nations are stepping up, that they're joining us, and I think this is going to be a regional solution to a problem that has been very specific for 47 years. It's time to bring it to an end, and I think we get there much more rapidly with allies like Saudi Arabia and others stepping into the fray and working arm in arm and side by side with us. And again, I think the sooner we can put this to conclusion, the better everybody will be in the world.
Okay. Mark Thiessen's piece called this sort of routine of negotiations and then talks about a deal and then Iranian violations a strategic cul-de-sac. And he put a lot of blame on the vice president for publicly promoting the view that it is not in the U.S. interest to resume major combat. I want to play the piece from Vance on Joe Rogan that he points to as an example of this. Listen here.
What is in our interest? How is it in the United States' interest to have 94 million desperate people flooding into Europe, flooding into the United States, to have, sort of the terrorist infrastructure that can get established when you fan terrorists all over the world? We've run this experiment before.
Thiessen writes in his piece, by elevating a deal as a definition of victory, Vance has given Iran a veto over America's ability to declare victory. All it has to do is refuse to agree, which it is doing. Perhaps it's time for the president to take advice of those who have delivered him success in Iran, not those like Vance who have failed him. Obviously, though, the vice president cannot call any shots like this on his own. The president is choosing to go along with it. Why do you think he keeps taking another lap on the Ferris wheel, so to speak?
I think this is a very harsh criticism, and as you take any comment out of context, you could wind up, saying what kind of advice is the president getting? The president takes advice from multiple sources. I'm honored the fact that he reaches out to me from time to time, but he is constantly absorbing information. He's constantly trying to deal with the situation on the ground, and I think what you've got the vice president doing is indicating there are considerations here that are very real. The president needs to hear all of those considerations. The one person that the president, will not fire, cannot fire, is the other person that stood elected alongside the president, and that's Vice President Vance. I think Vice President Vance takes it seriously upon himself. He's told this to me, that he needs to sound out every concern that could possibly exist, and I think you see another example of it right here. At the end of the day, though, Jackie, I'll come back to this. We hold the strategic advantage. President Trump has been incredibly clear. He will not allow the Iranian regime to have nuclear capacity, and I think President Trump's patience is worn quite thin. So this this current ceasefire, we're at the verge of being ready to unveil and unleash a tremendous amount of power on Iran.
Okay.
They need to pay attention to this, and they need to pay attention to the fact that other neighbors in the region are standing shoulder to shoulder with us right now.
Okay.
I think this is going to come to an end very soon.
I want to get your thoughts also on some Senate business this week. Obviously, the president has been trying to push a number of things through before recess. There was a spat this week with Tillis and Cornyn over this anti-weaponization fund that's holding up Blanche's confirmation as Attorney General. The president says he wants this fund after all, and he's going to try to push it through in Congress. Tillis responded to that, saying, despite comments as late as yesterday that the fund is dead, President Trump clearly intends to resurrect this payout pot for punks. It's unfortunate that Todd Blanche, who I consider qualified for the job, will not be confirmed because of this reversal. Hopefully we can resolve this by Tuesday. It was that last line that took me by surprise. Is Tuesday realistic for any of these issues here?
Well, I know Chuck Grassley has been working hard to get both Senator Tillis and Senator Cornyn to a place of comfort. But I also say this, I wholeheartedly disagree with the notion that this is something that's undeserved. The Biden DOJ did attack many people. Several people on my staff were targeted and weaponized by the DOJ. Their parents had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to deal with the weaponization of the DOJ. The hurt and the harm, very real. Personally, I was the first one of the Senate to say I would not seek any sort of recompense from this, even though I was targeted. You may know this. They took my phone records, Jack Smith and his team, under the Biden DOJ. I'm not looking for any compensation, but I do think that justice needs to be served here. And to say that there is nothing here to look at, the weaponization fund is just evidence that something very, very bad did happen under the Biden DOJ. There should be accountability. However that takes form, I don't think that we need to just sweep this under the rug. I think there needs to be an acknowledgement. I'm willing to accept Todd Blanche's word that this fund will not be put into motion. I think Todd Blanche is a very qualified nominee. I'm looking forward to getting him confirmed.
Okay. And finally, on the Save America Act, obviously the president pushing very strongly for this, and was asked this week if he still thinks that Thune is the man for the job. He's been unable to get it through. Thune shot back, saying that he must be looking at a different form of math if he believes that there are the votes for this. Aside, obviously, from the open question about whether this can go anywhere, in your mind, is it, I guess, helpful for Republicans to have this home turf fighting sucking up the oxygen rather than sort of selling the Republican agenda this close to the midterms?
Well, Jackie, I think the response that you heard has to do with the fact we've got 50 Republicans or more that are willing to push this through, but we need more Democrats to get to 60 if we're going to pass it as it stands. What we're focused on right now is a reconciliation product. Lindsey Graham was working on this before his untimely departure, bless his heart. But we are, again, working on a product that I think we can use the reconciliation process, which only requires a majority vote, which we can deliver. We're navigating that process right now. This is not an easy situation when you've got every Democrat in the Senate that's opposed to any type of election integrity. I think it's quite embarrassing for the Democrat Party, and people should be asking why it is they're doing this, what's their underlying motive. But at the same time, I'm ready to stay here to get this done in whatever form it requires. We do have a vehicle that's under consideration right now that I think we can get significant elements of the Save America Act passed.
You're willing to stay